So if anyone joins the session late or can't attend it, or you want to share this with any colleagues, there will be a copy of the presentation available at the end. So yeah, let's get started. Thank you to everyone who's joined us today. This is our monthly webinar. I think we've sort of got into a program of delivering webinars around energy. And this is the December update. So for those that don't know me, my name is Peter McMullen. I'm Senior Category Manager at CPC. So I manage the utilities framework, and I also manage the contracting team within CPC. And the idea of today's presentation is to give a market update, just so you're aware of everything that's current in the market, provide some recommendations and guidance around future procurement strategy. And at the end of this session, as I mentioned at the beginning, there'll be an opportunity for any attendees to ask any questions relevant to themselves. So without further ado, I'll hand over to my counterpart at Dukefield Energy. That's Nick Gauntlett, CEO of Dukefield Energy. So without further ado, Nick, please.
Thanks very much, Pete. Good afternoon, everyone. So CPC's Utilities, Supplies and Services Framework is approved by the DfE. We can do gas, electricity and water contracts, all procured through the framework across 3 lots. Following a Public Contracts Regulations 2015 compliant tendering process, Dukefield Energy are the sole appointed consultant on the framework at inception. So who are Dukefield Energy? We are a full service consultancy. We've been in the industry over 20 years now, particularly in the education industry, helping out schools, colleges, university, large multi-academy trusts with their procurement strategies for utilities. And we understand the energy issues faced by education establishments, particularly at the moment. We're trying to give as much help and support across the board in these extremely tough times for procurement in energy. We are a safe pair of hands and a trusted partner for procuring gas and electricity contracts for CPC. And we've delivered over £3.5 million worth of savings across all utilities over the last 3 years. So over to the important bit about what's happening on in the energy markets at the moment. I think it goes without saying, we have never seen 12 to 18 months like we've ever seen in the industry before. I've been around 20 years in the industry now, and we've never seen volatility like it. So what's happening? We are in the middle of a perfect storm. This dates back right to this time last year, where we had a lot of issues with LNG, which is liquefied natural gas shipments, coming into Europe. Now, what happened was China and the East started to outbid the rest of the world for these shipments, and they were paying, if anything, up to double the amount for each shipment to ensure that they were going in to dock over to the East and offload all their gas there. Europe wasn't willing to pay those prices because they were very, very high prices. After that, we obviously then saw the conflict in Ukraine, so Russia invading Ukraine, and then starting to use energy into Europe as a way of weaponizing and causing unrest and everything in the whole of Europe. We've also had a number of freak occurrences as well. So we've had some sabotages of the pipelines coming from Russia into Europe. So Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2. And we've also had some big issues with some LNG depots as well. The UK and actually Europe signed a big deal with America for LNG shipments to be sent across the sea from America into Europe and dock, and to be able to help support gas throughout this winter. As soon as that deal got signed, within 24 hours, that LNG depot in America actually then caught fire and part of it blew up, which is a little bit of a coincidence, and we've seen lots of things like that happening across the board at the moment, and no one can predict these. There's not an expert at all that was able to see the tensions in Ukraine and all these other bits and pieces that have happened. Seasonal prices due to all this have gone up at least 300% across the board over the last 12 months. We're seeing contracts rise, particularly in gas, anywhere between 5 and 10 times, depending on when you've procured your previous gas contract. There are some good news stories. We are starting to get more shipments coming in. Things are starting to calm down slightly, which is good news. However, prices aren't dropping as quickly as normally they would do, purely because at the moment where we are forecast for some very cold weather over the next 3 or 4 weeks. We also have got very little wind generation here in the UK as well, which again is kind of keeping prices very high. That's in terms of wind generation and other bits and pieces. Now, we're hearing a lot of stories around risk and everything else. In the UK, there is no issues in terms of gas and power running out at all. We get plenty of it. We only used to get around 5% of our gas from Russia. So for them stop sending it into Europe, it doesn't affect the UK in terms of supply. It's all down to our markets being very interlinked with the rest of the world. So Europe is quite heavily used to use a lot of Russian gas. And when their markets go up, ours does as well. So if anybody hears any sort of horror stories from brokers or other people out there, industry experts saying gas is going to run out, you need to sign a 5-year deal right now, otherwise you won't be able to get enough gas. Completely wrong. There's plenty out there. It's all down to the type of markets, anything in the news, and just the markets reacting to any news stories and risk. That's the most important thing. There is plenty of gas to go around, so please don't get forced into signing a long-term deal at all. It's certainly the last thing you should be doing, seeing that the prices are as high as they ever have been at the moment. So the government are coming to try and help people out, particularly in the short term, and they've introduced something called a price cap, which has come into effect over the last month. So what you would be seeing, and your current brokers or people should be contacting you or letting you know what the discounts you're getting on your bills, and you should start to see them from your November bill to your October consumption. You should start seeing what the price cap is. This is for anybody that signed a contract from the 1st of December last year right round to now. So if you've signed a current contract from the 1st of December last year, then you are eligible for this price cap. And it is down to when you sign the contract, depending on what type of discount you're going to get. And there is a spreadsheet on the Gov website, which we can share with everybody, what tells you when you log in, you look at when you sign a contract, and then it tells you what the discount you're going to get. But any of your brokers or any industry experts will be able to tell you what that is. Now, it only affects the commodity charge of your bill. So we've replicated this here just in the pink part. This now, the non-commodity elements, all the transportation charges and other levies and bits and pieces, and then distribution, still there. That is not discounted. This cap from the government only affects the commodity, and the commodity tends to make up around 60 to 70% of your bill. So you will see your bill coming down, but those other charges are still there as part of it. It is helping, and it runs until the 1st of April next year. We don't know what the government are going to do come 1st of April from 2023 onwards. They've not announced anything yet, and obviously we've seen a lot of changes in government at the moment. So I think they're just trying to understand, and they're asking a lot of industry experts at the moment, what should they be doing, particularly in public sector, to help and support everyone going forward. I believe they're going to have to do something. Prices are still very high for 2023 at the moment. So some help will be there from the 1st of April. As soon as we understand what that's going to be, we will, of course, do some webinars. We'll get some information out there on blogs and everything else, and we'll try and advise and help everybody as much as we can. But this particular scheme runs until the 1st of April, which will help you through these winter months. And then hopefully come the summer months next year, then things will start to die down a little bit. So, contract options. There are a lot of options out there. You don't have to do one single one, although lots of organisations, particularly in the education sector, we find like one particular way in terms of fully fixed. Lots of people like it for budget certainty and everything, but I'm just going to run through what different options are out there. And particularly at the moment with the very high prices in the volatile market, there might be a slightly different way of doing things to help and support you and to get you better prices in the long term. So lots of different options. We'll just run through these. Fully fixed. So both the energy and all the third party non-commodity costs are fixed for the duration of the contract. Energy only. So energy costs are fixed and all other non-energy costs are passed through. So you know what your commodity is going to be. Any other third-party charges, they are passed through. So if the government changed some of the levies or the taxations or anything, those would then potentially change through the length of your contract, depending on what you've signed up to. Fully flexible. Energy is purchased in tranches throughout the contract and directly off the wholesale market. So your consultant, your experts out there will look at the markets, and during your contract they will buy volumes of your usage of your commodity, and they will buy that at the best possible times. There are lots of information out there about when you should be buying bits and pieces, and all brokers and everybody will be able to buy that with the supplier you sign a contract with, to take advantage of things like dropping markets out there. There's also just not only flexible your single contract, you can have a flexible basket as well. So it's where you pull a number of customers together, put them all into one, so use their volume and then purchase a strategy that everybody signs up to. It's can be a good option. The more people go in, the cheaper the price. However, sometimes there are certain rules from suppliers in terms of when you can enter these baskets and come out of them again. So the flexibility isn't quite as much as just doing one on your own there. So these are just a number of contract options. Pros and cons of fixed energy contracts. Predominantly most of our customers, I'd like to say 60–70% of what we deal with is all fixed, and it's what people are used to, and other bits out there. So certainly easier for budgeting. You can have that hands-off approach. You know, once you've signed that contract, exactly what you're going to be paying for your kilowatt hours. Everything else is fully fixed for the length of your contract. So just depending on how much you use, you know what your budget's going to be there. So it's a lot easier, and there's less time managing budgets. And it does protect you from spikes in the markets out there and any rising energy prices. There's obviously security and consistency there, so you just know what you're going to do, and that's great. Some of the cons, obviously there's a risk of overpaying. What happens with the fixed price is your supplier will send you a contract, you'll have a look at it, and they have to build in some sort of meat on the bones there to be able to ensure that they don't go out of business if the market suddenly jumps up, because they won't be able to change your prices at all, but they will have to continue buying gas and power at a certain level. And if the markets jump up and they haven't hedged correctly, then suppliers will be in a little bit of trouble there. It can be difficult if your energy requirements change. So if you've got a site where you're adding lots of different sites and taking them away and your usage is going up and down, with flexible approach, you can obviously buy and sell back to the grid as many times as you want during those periods. Whereas the fixed price, it doesn't take into that consideration. Let's have a look. So flexible energy contracts, pros and cons. Flexible in terms of it's a much more greater freedom and control. It does spread the risk of purchasing over a period of time. If you make 10 purchases across the length of your contract, you're spreading that risk and not just particularly taking one day when you would sign up to a fixed price contract. You can take advantages of wholesale price movements. So markets are very, very high at the moment. If the markets start to come down quite considerably over the next 6 to 12 months, if you're on a flexible price, you can obviously take advantage of that. And as it drops, we can then buy more energy for you as you come down. Non-energy charges are clearly itemized on the bill. So anything of the non-commodity elements, you can still fix those. You know what you're going to be paying for all those levies and other bits and pieces throughout the contract period. You're just flexing the actual commodity. And it allows you more functionality than fixed price contracts. Cons, it can be uncertain when the market is very volatile. Obviously, every expert out there can predict as much as they possibly can about what's going to happen. But I think if the last 18 months has told us anything, no one can predict absolutely everything. We couldn't foresee that Russia was suddenly going to jump into Ukraine. We couldn't foresee that certain shipments and depots were going to blow up. These are all things that have suddenly happened very quickly. Now, if any broker out there is doing flexible pricing, can hedge correctly and buy these at right times, can take away that risk slightly. There are always going to be a little bit of risk there, but the most important thing is if you have the right strategy in place for a dropping market, then you can take advantage of it. Budgeting can be a little bit more difficult. Obviously, if you don't know what you're going to be paying for summer 24 yet, then it can be a little harder. There are a lot of budgeting software and bits and pieces that we work with, and we can help out with that, but you would only know what you're paying once we've certainly bought out those tranches of volume for you. And it also requires a bit more of an active approach. If you were to use Dukefield, or you already do, on a flexible buying strategy, we would have weekly and monthly catch-ups. We would sign up to a strategy together. We give you all the information. Effectively, we do all the work with you. But it does require you to be a little bit more active in that approach, obviously to sign up to certain things, and we just give you all that information to your fingertips. So that's it, in terms of a bit about the market and products and everything. But has anybody got any questions at all? Can be about anything about energy at all, and I will do my best to answer and help and support. So I'm going to just stop sharing my screen. I can see. Let's have a look. Haven't seen any questions yet from anybody.
I've not. I would say that we can provide both of our emails, Nick and I, after the call. If anyone has a question that they can't think of right now, but it comes to them later on, please do get in touch. If there's no questions. We had loads last time as well. You must have answered all the questions in your talk.
I think that the most important thing for me and from Dukefield, and I know from Pete from CPC side of things, it's about just trying to get as much information out there for organisations, just helping and supporting at this current time. The biggest thing I say to everybody, if you've got contracts coming up, at least 6 to 12 months, get in contact with us, give us 6 months notice, because it gives us that opportunity to look at different strategies for you, help and support and do what we can. The last thing you want to do is wait too late. Contact us within sort of a month of your contract end date, and it just doesn't give you that flexibility and the different options out there. The more time you give us or any organisation, they'll be able to help you out a lot more. And also, we put the right strategy and put the right hedging approach in there to get you the best possible price. Right now, everything's so volatile that if you leave it right to the last minute, it can cause a lot of problems. So that's the most important thing. Plenty of time. And we can
I think to add to that, Nick, in terms, if we've got any sort of members on the call today who haven't used the framework before, in terms of how you would engage with us, it's a very straightforward process. There's, like all of our frameworks, we have a dedicated page. Is chat muted? Sarah, can you have a look at that whilst I'm talking? I don't think it's muted, but
I don't think so.
Otherwise,
that message wouldn't have come through.
Yeah. That's true. So, Philip, if you have a question, please fire away.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, we've got lots coming through now. Something's happening.
Are there options to purchase renewable energy directly from the farms?
In terms of our framework, yes, we've got a number of suppliers that do fully renewable energy. Yeah, we can certainly do fully renewable. But just in terms of farms, well, we get them from the suppliers, so big main suppliers on the framework. But yeah, hopefully that helps. If you want a bit more information about the farms bit, then obviously, yeah, we can have a look. Well, can we get a 1-year fixed deals? Yes, certainly. Suppliers, just to give you a bit of information, suppliers very recently have been very, very reluctant to offer longer term deals, purely because they just don't know what's going to happen further than 6 to 12 months out there. So as more information comes in and the market becomes less volatile, suppliers are then more willing to go slightly longer term. 1-year fixed, yes, a lot of our suppliers are offering 1-year fixed at the moment, and it's particularly one of the deals. If you're not looking at going down the flex option, 1-year fixed is certainly a good deal at the moment to be going down and looking at. Gives you that sort of stability for the next year. We can see what's going on, gets you through a lot of the volatility, and it's something we can help with. So yeah.
Nick, I've just discovered there's a load of questions in the Q&A section. I wasn't getting alerted to those, so thank you to the person that highlighted that. So if I just run through the questions that have been asked on there. Lemore asks, what are the minimum levels for flexible purchasing? Are thresholds coming down?
They are. So suppliers, it's changing every week, Lemore. Some suppliers were saying it was around the sort of 5 gig area, so 5 million kilowatt hours for either gas or power. We do have some flexibility in that. Some suppliers, particularly depending on the organisation and everything, if you are underneath that and still want to look at flexible options, we can have a chat with the supplier. Suppliers are open to suggestions. They don't always say absolutely no. If you've been speaking to the team here at all, some suppliers will say maybe they will drop it down to maybe a gig, so 1 million kilowatt hours. Some suppliers might, at that particular time when we're talking, might only want to do anything over sort of 3 gig. Purely depends on you and your organisation and the suppliers at the time. It's changing all the time in terms of thresholds. So by all means, get in touch. I think you already are, Limor, as well. I think off the top of my head, I think you're speaking to Colin, aren't you? Is a pretty good, yeah. But we can certainly help and support, so we can look at certain options for you.
There was a second question from Limor as well. What regular updates such as help us see what is happening in the markets? I mean, just from a CPC perspective, you know, we will publish any updates provided by Nick's team via the CPC newsletter. Nick, is there any other ways that sort of our members can get updates?
Market updates, yes. It's something we do daily and weekly market updates that we get all in-house. If you're already speaking to any of the team, they can send you those directly. The most important thing for me is I know we do a monthly newsletter, but also what we're going to start doing is producing a monthly roundup of the sort of the markets and news stories and other bits and pieces, which we'll be sending out to people. Now, that will be current customers or anybody that we have been interacting with. As an ad hoc, we can sign anybody up to send updates to as well. That's a good thing. So if anybody wants market information, if you drop us an email or give us a call or anything, contact he and his team at CPC, we're able to sign you up and we'll be able to get that market information out there as much as possible. It's been so volatile and lots of changes in the market that it's really important that we get as much information out there to everybody, just to help and support and everything. But if anybody wants that, please get in touch with the team and we can certainly do that for you. So yeah.
Question from Tamsin. I have a question about being with West Mercia and whether it's worth staying with them.
Ooh. I am never going to rubbish any of the other organisations out there. They all do a very good job in their own way. I don't know about all their sort of pros and cons or anything. I do hear certain bits, but the most important thing for us is we, from Dukefield Energy and a CPC point of view, we treat everybody very individually. We build a strategy around you and don't just try and put you in a pot with lots of other people and say that you have to sign up to certain things at a certain time. We can do the contract that works out for you at your time, rather than getting into a big flexible basket or a fixed basket and you have to sign up at a certain time and they won't tell you what your prices are. We'll obviously give you a lot of full support. It's a full consultancy end to end. So we'll help with all the procurement strategy at the beginning. If you then decide to use us, you can then get a dedicated account manager who looks after you. They'll do your bill validation, all your query management with the supplier. They basically look after you from start to finish. And that's the most important thing for us, is we give you as much information and as support as possible. So that's what we do. In terms of West Mercia, I've heard a lot about them and the bits and pieces, but I wouldn't, you know, in terms of good things and bad things, I don't want to comment on that side of things. But yeah.
And I think what I would add to that, Tamsin, is that any sort of customer that comes to us with a potential requirement, we do that process for them on a no obligation basis. So, you know, there's no, if you're looking to make a comparison between any existing provider and potentially a new Dukefield provision, you know, you do so at no risk. It's entirely at your discretion. You know, that pricing process is undertaken by Dukefield, but they can't enter into contracts on your behalf. So ultimately, the decision will rest with you as to whether you wanted to move forward. And I think it's very, you know, at the moment, it's worth benchmarking your current provider against alternatives in the market to make sure you're getting the best deal.
I completely agree. Yeah, there's no obligation to sign at all. We can get you prices as many times as you want, refresh things, look at strategies, and at the end of the day, if you don't want to go down that road and you do sign with anybody else, absolutely fine with us. We just want to help and give you the much information and ensure that you and your organisation procure in the right way. And if that ends up not being with us, that's absolutely fine. There's no issues there at all.
That question, anyone just popped up?
I'm seeing a few in the chat now. So
where's it gone? Is it in the chat or the Q&A? Okay, let's move over to the chat. People seem to be using chat and Q&A, so I'm trying to keep up. We are speaking. Okay, have we dealt with that one? The one from Glenn. We are speaking with
Not
yourselves
yet,
at present.
no.
Contract ending 31st of March. Would you recommend a 1-year fixed or flex option?
Good question, Glenn. Purely depends on the organisation. Off the top of my head, obviously, I'll have a speak with the team and see what we can do in terms of if I knew a bit more information about you, Glenn. But fixed is obviously a good way to go down. If you're a larger organisation that uses a lot or gas or power, then definitely flex is certainly a good option right now. If you're on the smaller side, then you wouldn't get the benefit of flex. But then there's certainly some good fixed options out there. Definitely 1-year fixed at the moment. Flex would then tend to go a little bit longer, so you can take advantage of things just depending on length of contracts. Just to depend on you and your organisation. But it sounds like, Glenn, you've already got in contact, which is great. Still got plenty of time before April, which is really good. So let's just manage that situation. I'll tell you what, when I've come off here, I will just go and chat with the team and just see who you're speaking with and everything, and just we'll can drop you another note and give you a bit more information, Glenn. So not a problem at all.
Another one here from Teresa. We currently use our local authority for our gas and electric. Would you recommend moving away from them? I think before Nick answers that, I would reiterate what I just said around sort of, the no risk option to benchmark your existing provision against Dukefield or any other player in the market. I think you would be well advised to do that. Nick, anything you would add to that?
No, you're spot on. I would just say, look, benchmark. You've depending on how long you've got and everything else, if you're getting a good service there, that's great, but there's no harm in just looking and potentially looking at other options. You might find that we come up with a different strategy that suits you better, that they can't give you, or you might find that prices end up being very, very close. And then it comes down to you again, no obligation at all. No one's going to sign you anything. The only thing that we ever ask, it's a letter of authority that you sign with us, and that just allows us to get you prices. Doesn't allow us to sign anything on your behalf or do anything. It's completely down to you, and we're not doing that big hard sales pitch or anything like that at all. It's just about trying to give you the best possible advice. So most important thing.
Have we dealt with this one from Steve? Are we looking at lower 1-year fixes from 1st of April 23 than we had for April 22?
Okay, this is going to sound like a little bit of a cop-out, Steve, but it depends on when you signed your April 2022 contract. If you did that 6 to 12 months before April, so before we had all this volatility in the market and everything else, then no, prices from this April coming on will be a lot higher. Now, if you signed your April contract smack bang in the middle of when Russia then moved into Ukraine, prices spike very high at the beginning of this year. And it will probably mean that actually the prices that you're on currently, we should be able to beat. So it's not almost when your contract starts, it just depends on when you sign the contract. So, yeah.
We've got a final one here. What do you define as the smaller size when flex might not be ideal?
Good question. Half a gig or under, and by that I mean so 500,000 kilowatt hours. If you start going underneath that, you just don't. There's not the volume there to take advantage of a flexible market. So we're sort of talking primary schools, smaller secondary schools, single organisations. Flex comes into its own when you start talking about a sort of group. So either a large college or a multi-academy trust, so a number of schools or a number of primary schools. If that's what you're doing on your own. Now, there are options to try and group people together if you are really interested in flex, and that's something you don't mind. I speak to a lot of organisations every day, and some of them, as soon as I start talking about flex and thinking that the price will change from month to month, that's when people aren't interested in that at all, because they have to get sign off from different people every month depending on what's going on with the contracts. Some organisations are very agile and can deal with that, and it's absolutely fine. There's no issues there at all. So again, it's about speaking to you, Claire, and just seeing what works for your organisation. Some flex contracts do, some fixed price will be much better, but it's about just understanding everything, right from when your contract start date is coming up, when your renewal is, what we can do to help and support it. Yeah.
Looks like you've answered that one. She said, "Thank you, thank you, Claire." Well, I've just checked. Oh, here we go. I thought Deb asks, "We renewed in April 2022 and signed contracts only shortly before, but we have been told that we are not eligible for any price cap discount. Please, could you tell me why?" That doesn't sound.
Question. Doesn't make when I say that doesn't make any sense, I don't know
Who's told you that, Deb?
But yeah, if you signed a contract from the 1st of December last year onwards, so it's Colin. Okay, interesting. So we're talking, so you're with us at the moment. Now, the other element to this is depending, if we got you a really good rate, Deb, then what will happen is where the government is giving a price cap and they're looking at the discounts, depending on when you signed on that day, if it was a very good rate, the government aren't giving a discount on that. It purely depends on where the market was. So the government is basically looking at the commodity markets and comparing that to the wholesale prices and everything. I tell you what, Deb, I'm just going to drop down your name and I'm going to go and speak to Colin after this. And see what we can do, because it will depend on the day. If we look at the government spreadsheet and we find out exactly the date you signed, and then we have a look at what the discount is, there are a good handful of days that I've noticed in the spreadsheet that there is no discount, because the prices on that given day were were much better than they normally have been. It purely down to maybe something's happened in the market. Something's been so a really good news story. It's dropped the price quite considerably for just maybe 24 hours, in which case the government have gone, actually, there's no discount available on that because it was a cheaper rate than what it was the week before or the week after. But let me have a look, Deb. We'll come back to you and find out what's going on that one, because the only reason you wouldn't be eligible is purely because the prices.
Good stuff. Okay, got another one here from Mark. How do you prove competitiveness? First month prices only. Good question.
Okay, so what we do, Mark, we'll have a look at your organisation, the volume and everything else, and we'll look at starting to paint a picture in terms of your profile and everything for at least the first year. So we know when you use a lot more of your commodities, your gas or your power. We'll then have a look at the fixed prices that we're getting, but also then compare that to where the market is. And if we're seeing a big drop in market, we can then effectively start to take advantage and map out a strategy in terms of when we would be buying that commodity. There are other elements with flex as well. So it's not, you can take, flex can be, I was about to say very flexible, but you can do lots of different things. So you could flex every single day and get everything. And so you could have a different price every day if you wanted. You could flex once a month, so we would buy monthly volumes, or you can look at doing seasonally or quarterly. You can fix a large amount of commodity. So we could, at the very beginning, buy out 50% of your commodity for the year. So you know you've got a certain rate for that 50%. We would only then flex the other 50% for you throughout the year. So you already know what you're buying for a certain chunk. So there are so many options with flex. But what we can also do is put upper limits in there. So if a price was to go through that ceiling, we could basically put a ceiling in there as a bit of a buffer. And if we noticed the price was going above that for a certain volume and a certain period, we would then buy out the rest of your contract. So you know the most expensive price you would be paying is X, Mark. But it's effectively what we do is we just go through everything with you about you and your organisation and the types of meters, and then we could just take everything from there, really, if that helps. But by all means, please get in touch and we can have a chat and just go through everything in more detail with you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nick. Just checking on the Q&A. We've not had any more questions in there. I think
that's it.
Unless I've missed one, we've answered everyone's questions. So final call for questions. If you've got one, please bang it in the chat.
I'm just going to realise I finished the presentation before I got to the contact us information for just for Dukefield, and also Pete will have his contact information there as well. But if you want to get through to the team at Dukefield Energy, if anybody's got a pen and paper there, I'm just going to read out a number. So it's 0345 4022 461. Or if you want to email straight into the team, so we've got a inbox that is managed by the team for the initial inquiries, and it's info@Dukefield Energy, all one word, .co.uk. So if you'd like to contact, if you need anything at all, contact us there, and we'll be able to get in touch.
I'll just put my email in the chat as well, and I'm available on utilities and any other procurement requirements that you may have. Utilities is one of 90 agreements that we offer. So by all means, if you have another requirement, get in touch and I'll signpost you to the right people.
Chris, I've just seen you. Yeah, another. Yeah, if you're due to renew in April 23, do we need to act now or sign, or should we wait? Ooh, good. Phil, I'll get that number again for you. So depends on a number of factors at the moment. We're seeing, because of the cold weather, we're seeing prices jump up in the last week and a half quite considerably. So you have still got a little bit of time, Chris, for between now and April. We'd monitor the market very carefully over the next few weeks, and if we still think they're rising, then we might come up with something for you. But the most important thing there, Chris, get in contact, and we can have a look at the volumes and everything you're talking about, and yeah, have a chat and see what we can do to help you for your April renewal, if that's okay.
I'm going to put the phone number and email in the chat as well. So, oh yeah, Sarah's done that. Sarah's done that.
Great. I think that's it, everyone.
Just put the framework webpage link in there as well. So if you are a new customer and you're looking to engage with Dukefield, there is a document. There's a documentation section of that page, and that includes the user guide for the framework, but also the 2 bits of information that you would need to supply to Nick's team. That's the letter of authority template, and you would need to put that template on your institution's letterheaded paper. And as well as that, we've got the supply information template, which gives Nick's team full details about your profile, your consumption, your meters, etc. And that's the info that they would need to source quotes on your behalf. So if anyone is interested in triggering a process, that's where you can get those 2 documents from. Okay. Looks like we've had all the questions we're going to get, but if not, you've got all the contact info there, and you can follow up with either myself or Nick. I would say that if you've got an energy related question, Nick is clearly our expert on this. So, you know, fire away at him. Any general procurement matters, you can come to myself. And I hope it's been a useful session for you. Thank you very much, Nick.
No problem. Thank you, everyone.
As ever. And a copy, like I said at the beginning, a copy of this presentation will be available in the chat at the end of the session, so you can rewatch it at your leisure if you are so inclined. Okay.
Thanks very much, Will.
Grand. Okay. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.